Hello, welcome to episode 3 of Bears Boldly Go, where me and Matt here discuss the original series Star Trek motion pictures at the moment.
Yep, and because of the time that we're discussing it, after we've talked about one of the individual films,
It's time
we'll
for
have a
Disco
look.
Corner.
Yeah, it's disco time. So we'll have a little chat about Discovery season 3 as it's currently airing
Yeah.
worldwide. In fact, we're recording this 24 hours after season 3, episode 7 recorded. So we'll be talking about episode 6 and 7 today. But
I'm not
first,
gonna lie, I think Disco Corner might run longer than our discussion on Search for Spock. So maybe this week's episode should really be Spock Corner.
who's to say? Who's to say? But as you mentioned it, yeah, it's episode 3 for us. So that means it's movie 3 for
Search for
Star.
Spock.
Yeah, so Search for Spock. So this is part 2 in what is often dubbed as the Spock trilogy. So that's The Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and Voyage Home.
And you know what?
Which
It's fine.
it is, isn't it? It is.
Yeah.
It's
It
like
it
in
actually it gets a bad rap because Star Trek has, and the more and more I think about this, I don't actually think I agree with it.
No, I don't.
Is that
I know where you're going, but I
odd-numbered
don't.
films are bad. Search for
Yes.
Spock isn't bad. It's fine.
Yeah, I think the problem that Search for Spock has is that it is a very deliberate, at first, sequel to Wrath of Khan, and also a very deliberate middle piece between Wrath of Khan and Voyage Home. And middle films, especially deliberate middle films, do tend to struggle a little bit. Obviously,
Because it doesn't have a beginning.
yeah, it doesn't have a beginning and it doesn't really have an end.
It does have a middle. It has an awful lot of middle.
It's got lots. In fact, the whole film is just middle.
It really is. It's
So,
nearly 2 hours
mm,
of middle.
yeah. And obviously, coming off Wrath of Khan, which, as we discussed last week, it was always going to be a struggle. So, I mean, Wrath of Khan, it's as good as it can get, really.
Yeah.
As far as Star Trek as a movie going experience goes, like we'll discuss Star Trek as TV later, but Star Trek as film, Wrath of Khan is like there might be films that match it. There might even be one that's already matched it, but I don't think you can get any better than Wrath of Khan. So of course, following it up with this one was always going to be a struggle. Um, and change of director as well. This is
Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy making his
Spock
first.
himself.
Yeah, Spock himself making his first outing. I suppose it does work because obviously he's barely in the film, which means that he gets to step back and direct everyone else.
Yeah, he's not. Other than his voice here and there, which would be a bit of
Yeah,
ADR, he's not in
and
it until
the very
the last
end.
5-10 minutes at most.
Yep. So of course, as a director, that means he doesn't have to direct himself. He doesn't have to like think about his own position or performance or anything like that. He can just sit back and direct everyone else. And of course, for the majority of the cast at this point, they'd been working together for 25 years because this came out in '84. So 28 years they've been working together. No, is it? No, not 28 years.
It's a set
Eight,
amount of years.
18 years. 18 years they've been working together. Is my maths is terrible. Which is not an inconsiderate amount of time. So obviously, probably a good choice for director. I
So,
don't think it was a bad choice. Certainly.
what this film is about,
Mm,
at the end of Wrath of Khan, when Spock
mm,
sacrifices himself, he deposits his soul in into Bones, good old
yep.
Hank McCoy.
Yep.
And I think this is one of those moments that cements, as we talked last week, of those three as a triumvirate as opposed to two sets of two.
Mm,
And it's about Kirk upon the request of Sarek, Spock's father,
Yep.
to find his body and reunite and bring it back to Vulcan.
Yep.
What they don't know is that because he was left on the Genesis planet, he has been reborn.
Yep. The Genesis wave obviously destroyed Spock that was, but used that DNA and regrew him. So throughout the film, once they find the boy, you see rapid aging, including actually some really good practical effects.
So the
That of him changing age in his bones, actually changing position
the
in the face.
B plot of this film
Hmm.
is Lieutenant Savick,
Yep.
sorry,
Yep.
having been recast from the previous film.
From Kirstie Alley. Yeah.
Yeah, to
Bear with me a second.
yeah. Well, yeah. So the B
To
plot is her and Kirk's son.
Robin Curtis.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So her Savick and Kirk's son, David, exploring and researching the Genesis planet.
Yeah.
All in the
And
background, some Klingons, headed up by Christopher Lloyd
yeah, in
in a
a pre
wonderful
Doc Brown.
performance.
Oh, I mean, he's one of the best Klingons.
Yes,
I think it might be there's an argument this might end up being the weakest or second weakest of the Kirk movies.
this
Original cast Kirk movies.
yeah,
We
and it
but I
probably
think it's
is.
got one of the stronger villains in a way.
Yeah,
Um, Again,
and
he had a lot to contend with coming off Khan, but I think Christopher Lloyd rises to the occasion.
so we've had two previous films where Kirk kind of steals the Enterprise.
Mm.
In this film, he actually steals the Enterprise.
Yeah, yeah, quite literally this time.
Him and his crew,
Mm,
ignoring orders to not go back to the planet,
yeah,
steal the Enterprise and sabotage Starfleet's hottest new ship, the Excelsior.
yeah. Not only a new ship, a brand new class. The
Yep.
Excelsior at this point
So good,
is
they turned it into an Enterprise later on down the line.
they did the Enterprise B, as I
Yeah.
think we discussed last week.
Yeah.
And of course, not only did he steal it this time properly, not just kind of surreptitiously, this time he
He
decides,
blew it up.
let's hide the evidence. So, and blows it up.
You have this wonderful. The Klingons have decided they've heard about Genesis and want
Mm,
the information. So you have a pairing of Kirk v. Christopher Lloyd's Klingon captain.
mm,
And we mentioned it the past 2 weeks, and it really cemented with me in this film.
yeah.
But the overarching plot of all these films, I think I tweeted out about it while I was watching it, how they share the same core story as the Metal Gear franchise.
Yes.
What happens to old soldiers who are no longer
Mm,
required or needed due to be that peace or
yeah. But then I think maybe, I mean, with how much of a cinephile Kojima is, there's a very decent chance that he's a Star Trek fan.
yeah,
Um, and the first Metal Gear came out in '87, so that idea could have very well been in his mind.
because
Having,
the at this point the Klingons and the Federation are at a level of not active hostility, aren't they?
it's almost like a Cold War,
Yeah,
which is obviously deliberate because this was during, if anything, the height of the Cold War.
yeah,
The '80s were where it was either going to make or break. So obviously, by the end of the '80s, we know that the Cold War was over. The Soviet Union fell. Um, excuse me. Berlin Wall came down, etc. But it was still very, very much at that point where things were probably the warmest of the Cold War, and any single wrong move could have triggered a nuclear war, and it could have been the end of the world as we know it. Something actually that is in Star Trek history.
Yeah,
That in that particular timeline, it appears that the Cold War did happen, and did kick off and did become a warm war. Um,
I
so
mean, if again, spoilers for anyone who's not seen this film as we
hey,
dive a little bit more into it.
yeah,
Kirk loses his son in
mm,
this film to the Klingons.
hmm
It's before he blows up the
the
Enterprise, isn't
Enterprise.
it? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, he's when he's still on board because he's reluctant to give in to the Klingon demands, and the Klingons pick one of their hostages at random, and it just happens to be David. Um,
it doesn't
I
know.
could, mm.
They have a picture, and David fights, and he ends up being
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
David
Um,
fights to protect young Spock, who is a
mm,
teenager at this point, and Savick.
mm. So he ends up dying, but and then of course that itself could be the trigger for a war, and this is how again the old soldier has to learn how to cope with things and not
Well, there's
necessarily triggering into stellar war.
there's a notion, and the notion that I think is explored more in further films,
Mm,
that blowing up the ship with the crew of a Klingon ship on board
mm,
is an is an act of vengeance on Kirk's
yeah,
part. Although when they land on the planet and Kirk kind of regrets doing it, I
mm,
think you have quite a wonderful line from it's from Bones, isn't it? You
yeah,
did what you always do, Jim. You took death and turned it into a fighting chance,
yeah,
which is quite a great line.
yeah. Exactly. I mean, and
These are
again,
very quotable films.
it follows up from the previous film, which was talking about exactly that. It's the film that introduced the Kobayashi Maru,
Yeah.
the no-win situation. This is like Kirk somehow managing to do it again, and it's always that question, really, of like, when will he finally run out of luck, or when will it be him that actually has to pay the price for it rather than someone else? Obviously, in this case, his son.
What we think of, I do think what we think of as Kirk in our
Mm,
heads is informed quite heavily by the old Kirk or the older Kirk of the
mm,
motion picture trilogy.
yeah.
Because of the way TV in the 60s was, and it's very episodic,
Mm.
character development isn't a massive feature. It's
Not
there,
because
but it's
it's
not.
it's it's a lot more subtle. Again,
Yeah,
having recently rewatched the whole lot, it's not like there's a big arc, but there's certainly um like he doesn't grow because he's almost already there. If you know, like
yeah.
he's a young captain, but he's already a captain. So,
But I think
um,
it's this series of films
mm,
of Kirk wrestling with a myth of Kirk
yeah,
that I think, and I think this is films that infirms, not infirms, informs our myth
of
of
Kirk.
Kirk.
Yeah,
Like it's these films of Kirk the legend that almost
mm,
actually create
the
Kirk
legend.
the legend.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've been I'm up to in my full chronological Star Trek rewatch. I'm on season 4 of TNG now.
Yeah.
But in season 1, I think it is, they reference the Kirk Enterprise. But they don't even mention Kirk. It's like literally a version of the Enterprise. I think they do mention Kirk, but it's like under the captaincy of Captain Kirk. Like he almost doesn't mean anything at that point because
Well,
so much has happened.
they
Um,
early seasons of TNG, there was a firm
mm,
don't reference
the
the original
movie.
series rule.
Mm.
from Roddenberry,
Yeah.
which started to be laxed with the season 3 episode that has
Mm.
Sarek in.
Yeah. And which
Although,
I've
saying that,
watched the other day, and it's outstanding. And
and
obviously they had Bones in the first
yeah,
episode.
Encounter at Farpoint has Bones in it.
Yeah, yeah. But they don't mention his name.
No, you're right, they don't.
Yeah, they don't mention his name. He's just a cantankerous old admiral at that point.
I mean,
But
Kirk is long lost at this point
or presumed dead.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Although they hadn't.
Spock is obviously alive and kicking.
What's around and about? Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think you're right. There's it's an odd one because there's almost like in the public psyche there is almost two views of Kirk. There is the 60s TV version, and for a lot of people that is what they think of as Kirk. And
Yeah.
then equally for a lot of people who didn't necessarily watch the TV series, what they think of
Like,
is Kirk from the films.
I saw
Um,
odd episodes of original
yeah,
series, but I grew up on watching The Next Generation and
yeah,
watching the 6 motion
yeah.
picture Star
I
Trek
think
feature films.
I think if anything, my rewatch has actually slightly enhanced my view of Kirk because and the whole crew really. But I have spotted a lot more of the good things about Kirk in the TV
Yeah.
series than I think I've seen previously. That again, I've reached a certain maturity. I've been watching it quite carefully and what have you, rather than it just being something on in the background at 6 o'clock on BBC Two, just because that happens to be what's on. And I think there is actually a lot more nuance to Kirk in the original series than people like give Shatner credit for, and even give Roddenberry and the creative team credit for. But I think
Shatner is a better actor than people give him credit for.
Shatner is a significantly better actor than people give him credit for.
He's
I think
he's
it doesn't
hammy
help.
at times, but
Oh, it is, it is. But
it
then that's
doesn't
that's also the era.
matter.
I mean, that is the era though, as well, especially for the TV series.
But some of
Um,
the performances he turns in for these
mm,
films,
oh, yeah,
like you, I think you're hard pressed to find a better version of old retired hero struggling to settle down than these
done this
films.
well.
Yeah,
Done this well, yeah. I think with the consistency as well, because I think even in the week, what is definitely the weakest film, which we'll get to in 2 weeks' time, um, even in that, actually, it's not too bad. Like they still put good performances on. They're still like the
this
camaraderie, the relationship is still there.
this will
Um,
touch on some stuff I have thought wise about in Disco Corner later.
mm,
But I think for some of the best filmic renditions of a nature and not necessarily the positives of
mm,
heroism,
mm,
it's I think these are fascinating films because it could have been so easy to make
mm,
films about the heroic crew of the Enterprise on their many adventures, on their further
yeah.
adventures, right?
Mm.
And that's not what they do with any of these films.
No, I think there's a common criticism that the films are just feature length episodes of the TV series, and I having rewatched them like deliberately and thought about them recently, I tend to disagree. I
I
think there are
think
one or
it's
two.
a
I think there are one or
criticism that
two
can be
that are.
labeled at some of the next generation films.
Yeah, I think some of the TNG
And I
films.
think
Yeah.
partly that we were talking last night how the next generation
Mm,
has these feature length capstones on their series,
yeah.
at least from series like 3 onwards.
Yeah, they've got like a cliffhanger episode of the end of
Yeah.
one series followed by. I mean, even then, I mean, like the first episode of like ever Encounter at Farpoint is
It's
kind of
feature
does the
length.
same thing. It is a
Yeah,
film. It's
it's a very
90 plus
boring film,
minutes.
but it is a film.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
I
I mean,
it can for a point.
I wouldn't want to watch it as a film, but knowing it is the very long pilot of a TV series, it's fine,
And nothing
and
happens in it.
it sets things up as well.
It does. It sets
Um,
up the diplomatic
mm,
Star Trek, right? The
yeah,
Star Trek of Picard.
mm, but yeah, I think it's I think this film does suffer from being middle film syndrome.
Yeah, it is very middle.
It's but
It's
that
why
isn't
we've spoken,
but.
but
eh,
I don't have a lot to say about the film.
No, I enjoy it. I wouldn't necessarily want to watch it by itself, but I
Okay.
would. But as part of a trilogy of sorts,
Yeah, I've watched.
I think it is a necessary part of a trilogy, but isn't necessarily a great standalone film.
Although, as I said last week,
Hmm.
I watched this film several times before ever seeing Rafa Khan because Rafa
Hmm.
Khan wasn't deemed age appropriate for me yet.
But I think you could still just about get a hook.
Yeah,
Like if you watch that and Voyage Home, then like this because this has the recap of what happens in Wrath of Khan anyway at
yeah.
the beginning of the film, you could get an idea
Like
enough.
I've
Um,
watched both Rafa Khan and Voyage Alone standalone many a
yeah,
time.
but then Wrath of
Search for
Khan
Spock
can
is
do
never
that.
one I've
No,
picked up to do that with.
yeah, but then I think again that's the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, it is
Yeah,
definitely part. I mean, even at they knew they were making Voyage Home because at the end of this film, in the credits, it says the crew will return for
yeah,
Star Trek Voyage Home. So like it was um, a rarity at that time of a film that knew that was going to have a sequel come, no matter what. The
yeah.
next one was coming. Um, that it didn't happen often in those times. So, Cold Light of Day.
Film
So
four, I
far,
think.
we've hmm?
I think I'd still give this film four.
Yeah.
I've
So on.
started I've started using Letterboxd again,
Mm,
which is a film diary tracking
yeah, yeah.
website.
Mm,
And yeah, after watching this film,
well,
after our discussion, I think a
mm.
three might be fairer. But in the moment of having watched it, I still gave it a four.
You see, I don't. Obviously, on our for those who haven't watched it before, watched us before, our patented Cold Light of Day scale, a 3 out of 5 is where we put the film The Cold Light of Day, the most average film ever made, a film that has no good bits or bad bits, just bits, and
Considering
therefore,
I opened this episode with going, it's fine.
yeah.
Maybe
But
it
I think
is.
no. You see, the thing is, I don't. Like my interpretation of Cold Light of Day is that a 3 is the biggest crime that you could have. Um, that a 3 is almost the worst film ever made. So I don't think it would be exactly on a 3, because I don't think it is exactly on a 3. I think that like this far exceeds a 3, and the plot's a little bit whatever, but it's sort of a means to allow again the actors and the overall story arc to continue a bit more. So as we've said, Christopher Lloyd, absolutely phenomenal, and especially coming after like immediately after Khan, like how hard that would have been to have followed that up, and he does it.
Point actually.
I mean, he's very nearly. If he had a better film to be in,
Yeah.
that villain would be as good as Khan.
And
And
as we know,
so,
the villain in the
mm,
next film
mm,
is man itself.
is man itself indeed. So yeah, I think you're probably right. Somewhere around a 4. Um, I think that is down to the quality of performance, as opposed, which I suppose as we discussed before, that can be extended to how well the director works with the actors. And if you're going to give plaudits to the director, I think you can give plaudits to the film as a whole, even if the writing is not quite there. So I think I'll go for a high 3 myself. I'm thinking more like a
Yeah.
3.8, 3.9. I don't think I could quite put it on a 4.
Oh, 3.8 or 3.9. I thought you were saying
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
giving it a 3.839. I thought that's a weird
That's
specific
it.
score.
Yeah, that's an incredibly specific. Yeah, to 3 decimal points, to
That's how
3 decimal
granular
places.
the
Yeah,
review is.
yeah. But no, I think 3.8, 3.9, something like that. I think like
Tell me,
depending. Mm,
what's the difference between a 3.838 and a
yeah.
3.839 and a 3.840?
Well, I mean, I think in a short series of films, nothing. But maybe if I was marking the entire run of Star Trek, every single episode, every single film, then maybe I would like, and I had to put them in
Get
exact
that
order.
granular.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to put them in exact order of quality without any ties, then yeah, that might be
So
it.
yeah,
That
we
might be it.
will
We'll return next week
with
with
Voyage Home, my
yeah, we're gonna.
personal favorite Star Trek film.
It might be mine.
I love Voyage Home. It's
It certainly
part of me
was as a kid.
nostalgia. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
as a
that love
kid.
of it. It's that childlike love of it I have that just hasn't
Yeah,
faded.
mm. Yeah. As a kid, it was. I think as an adult, possibly Star Trek: First Contact. But
Mm. Voyage
uh,
Home
yeah.
is very much a film of the 80s.
Yep. But we'll discuss that next week.
Yep.
In the
And now
meantime, get
it's
your
time
disco balls ready.
Disco Corner.
Yeah,
No dancing,
indeed.
Matt.
I'll
Yeah.
just yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, some
So
of that. Yeah,
Star Trek Discovery, season 3, episode 6 and 7.
6 and 7. Yeah.
Episode 6, for anyone wanting a bit of a catch up. So again, spoilers present throughout this
Hmm.
conversation. I feel like a
Yeah.
spoiler tag here, a
Yeah.
bit
Yellow
more
alert.
important than for the very old film we just discussed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So episode 6 has Michael going on a rogue mission,
Yeah.
which is going to be the core point of a lot of my thoughts here.
Mm.
And episode 7 is both building on stuff set up in Star Trek Picard from last year
Yep.
and a sequel to a two-part The Next Generation episode,
Indeed.
to the point where it is even named
After the next
Unification
generation.
Part 3.
Yep.
Um,
Which I liked.
so did I.
Yeah, I thought it was a lovely nod. And obviously, we've just talked about the search for Spock, and this episode, if anything, is a search for the what Spock wanted,
Yes.
not necessarily um, the a
A
search for
search
Spock
for the heart
himself,
of Spock.
a search for the heart of Spock, who at this point has become some of the deserved legend, I think, in Vulcan and Romulan history.
Bearing in mind
Mm,
that when everyone in this timeline clocks Spock as no longer
existing.
Sting, he traveled to a second timeline and saved a whole different Vulcan.
Yep. Oh, you know, he didn't say Vulcan. Vulcan.
He saved Vulcan's heritage, though, by
Yeah.
kind of
Because
sticking
it
around.
essentially in the two separate universes, we might get to the Pineverse one day. Vulcan collapsed in the
It is,
Pineverse.
yeah. Actually,
Yeah,
it is the Kelvin timeline.
yeah, and it's Pineverse.
It is the Kelvin
Um,
timeline. That is its
yeah,
canonical term.
yeah. What's this one? The Fahrenheit.
It's prime.
So in Prime. Yeah. So in and obviously in this universe, the same source of destruction destroyed Romulus, and so the Romulan refugees eventually moved back home to Vulcan, where
Picard
they'd
try but fail, but obviously at some
mm,
point
yeah,
along the line there is
something
something
happens.
introduced in Picard.
Mm.
The what's their name?
The space nuns.
Yes,
Yeah, I can't remember the
the
name.
ones who pledge themselves to lost causes.
Yeah, Lost Causes and
Which,
Ultimate Candor.
as an idea,
Yeah, brilliant.
amazing. Absolutely
Yeah,
love it. It was
mm,
one of the best bits of Picard,
yeah,
and the bits we get of it here are great as well.
yes. I
But
wondered what you were about to say there. I had a feeling you were going to say you didn't like it.
no, a
No,
lot of my issues lie in episode 6.
go on then. What?
But they're in
Let's
episode 7 as well. So episode 6
let's get them out of the
has
way with.
Michael's friend telling him about a black box that he's
Mm,
found, but he's gone missing, and his ship and
mm,
his cat arrive.
mm,
Michael goes to Saru, and Saru is like, "Oh no, we can't go and do this. We've got
mm,
other stuff we need to do." And Michael, being Michael and having literally zero respect for authority, decides to grab a Philippa
mm.
and go and do it anyway.
Yeah.
And modern Star Trek, I think, as a concept, is not about heroes.
Mm.
And I know we just had that whole discussion about how this film series is great for how it approaches the idea of heroes,
But then
but
it's also about flawed heroes. That
but
and
televised
mm,
flawed heroes are here as well. I'm
mm,
more thinking televised Star Trek.
yeah.
The nature of its episodic and especially TNG era Star
Mm,
Trek, it all the cast are there to be. There's a lack of drama.
mm.
The drama is in whatever externally is happening.
What? Yeah.
Spock, well, not Spock, sorry. Spock and Bones did have some drama, to be fair, but on the TNG crew, Riker's not getting into a bust up with Data.
No. No.
But modern television is more character based,
Mm.
and by that I mean more character drama. Star Trek: The Next Generation has characters,
I get you.
obviously.
Yeah. 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 Modern TV is about conflict,
Yes,
whereas like
and conflict between the cast, not just an external.
yeah. Yeah.
So it leads to this slight jar where, and I think it's why we've doubled down on Suspicious Federation,
Mm,
right? Across modern Trek, we doubled
mm.
down on the idea that the Federation might not be trustworthy.
Or at least
And
elements of it.
yeah, it's always been there. You always had crooked
Mm,
admirals, but the notion was held above, and it's still doing that. I just think
yeah.
this episode with Michael running off on her own, and I don't even. I think it's right for the show.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't even think it's a problem. It's just it highlights the moments where I feel Star Trek is definitely something different now.
Mm.
And I don't think a classical Star Trek would be right for TV in
I don't
2020.
think it would work in the
No,
slightest. I think that's where the Orville succeeds because it is tongue in cheek
it's satire.
while it's satire. Yeah, so it
It's Galaxy
obviously
Quest all over again,
it
isn't it?
it loves its source material, but at the same time it has enough humor that it doesn't take itself too seriously, and that
It's
means that we don't have to either.
Orville is a love
Mm,
letter to the next
yeah.
generation era Star Trek.
Mm.
Star Trek should not be a love letter to itself.
No. No.
Not if it wants to move
Yeah.
forward. I think
Yeah.
that's some of the problems Star Wars has had in recent years.
I think that's some of the problems I had with Picard, to be perfectly honest. That I felt that Picard was almost a bit too much like Star Wars has been, and even the weaker aspects of the Kelvin universe Star Trek films. That
Yeah,
on the surface felt glossy and new, but were really sort of just pastiches of what had come before. Especially the film that you insist doesn't exist, and which again we may or may not get to one day,
probably will.
but we probably will.
Into Darkness for
Into
anyone who
Dark, yeah,
is
yeah,
wondering.
yeah. The Hair of Khan, as it might have been called, um, but I think, yeah, I think that's why I love Discovery so much, because it isn't necessarily a love letter to Star Trek, but it is certainly a love letter to the Federation and the ideals of the Federation, and in turn, the ideas that Star Trek as a TV series could kind of stealthily put in there, as we've
Well, so
discussed before, like
these,
the first interracial kiss,
yeah,
having the trill be an allegory for transgender, and etc etc etc. There's so many things
and
that Star Trek does without you realizing it's doing it.
Star
Um,
Trek needs this evolution if it's going to
mm,
last. We have had a drought of
mm,
Star Trek for the past
yeah,
decade, really, and now we're getting more Star Trek than we know what to do with,
and I'd
and I'm
say there's
fine with
also
that.
there's also been a drought of things that even come close to ticking that Star Trek box as
Yeah,
well. Like outside of, like, I mean, with the exception maybe of Mass Effect, the computer games series. For those that don't know, I think there was an element there that kind of scratched that itch for me, and I think in Discovery in particular, we're seeing elements of Mass Effect, which especially in season 3, which I have no problem with whatsoever.
yeah. That
Um,
this is definitely what modern Star Trek should be. I think
yep.
I have no problems with it being that. I even very much
Mm,
enjoy it.
mm,
It's just there are moments, and episode 6 was a big one for me, where it kind of
mm,
clashes with what Star Trek is in my head.
yeah.
And but I don't think modern Star Trek should be what Star Trek
Yeah,
is in my head at times.
necessarily
It's
either. Yeah.
yeah,
You see, now that we've been talking about it, I suddenly thought to myself, like, because again, we talked about Search for Spock earlier, and the fact that like Picard, like pretend, like kind of sort of stole it, actually did steal it and blew it up. Like maybe, like obviously, Burnham has always been set up as being um, the Vulcan allegory. Well, the Vulcan version in this thing. Maybe she's Kirk. Maybe she is a, like, because obviously Discovery starts in a pre-Kirk era like
it's
setting.
what
Maybe she's what Kirk was before he became a captain, and so
oh,
we're seeing almost Kirk the young years.
it's how her mum refers to her, like how
Mm,
Burnham likes to think of herself as a Vulcan and being all about logic,
yeah,
but she is
as emotional
privately
as it gets.
emotional, right? As a
Yeah.
human can be.
Mm. I think she's
And
also. Go on. Sorry.
it's just saying, and moving. Well, actually, I was about to move on, so you say what you got to say first.
I think the other thing is that, like, I sort of had a similar issue with episode 6. But then when I realized where they were going with the consequences of it, which I realized in episode 6, I know they fulfill it in episode 7, but that Tilly was going to become the first
Did not
officer.
clock that in episode 6. That actually took me a little by surprise.
I clocked it in episode 6. I saw it like like as soon as, I think it was when she turned to Saru and said, "No, you need to shop her to Starfleet."
Yeah.
Like I think I got it, a hint of it there, and then by the end of the episode, I was convinced. So that in episode 7,
Still there? Hello. Sorry about this, guys. We seem to have lost Matt. Um, we will take a short break here, and we'll be back with you in a moment. Have fun. I say a short break to you guys watching at home. There will be no break, but a break for us. So there'll be a cut here. See,
And
but we just had a quick cut. You might not notice, but we had a cut. We were talking about Tilly, Matt.
yeah, um, so I know obviously you had a few issues with episode 6, as did I, to be honest. I think, but I didn't have as much as you did. I think before we froze, you said that you didn't spot that Tilly was going to get promoted, whereas
Yeah,
like I got it like fairly early in the episode when Tilly told Saru to shop Burnham to
yeah,
Starfleet. So for me, actually, like especially once in episode 7, it does get confirmed. She gets offered the job of
yeah.
being the number
She's the
one.
right choice.
She's definitely the right choice, and it was full of emotion, and it was wonderful, and
She's
again, it's like that. Mike,
realistically, she's
go on.
probably due a promotion anyway.
She's probably due a promotion anyway. Of course, at this point, she's still an ensign, and she's been given the position of number one. But I think the thing is that like um, Burnham was the right tool to get us to that point.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that it also only took essentially one episode to do that, um,
Um,
as much as it might be an episode I have issues with in the same way that you do, I think it was probably the right choice overall
Second in command is the wrong position for
for
Burnham,
Burnham.
only
Hmm.
because of her lack
Yeah.
of. It's not that she doesn't respect Saru.
No.
She's just convinced that her way
She either needs significantly less power or
or
she needs to
significantly
be the
more power.
or significant, yeah,
Yeah,
which is why I compared her to Kirk before we froze, in that I think that maybe again she's the same era as Kirk, she's a similar
yeah,
age to Kirk, that um, maybe she has those same brash issues that Kirk would have had at that age, that by the time we first see Kirk in the original series, bearing in mind that we don't even see Kirk on the maiden voyage of his run
yeah.
of being Starfleet captain. Um, so maybe she has the same issues. Maybe she is meant to be like Kirk. Maybe again because obviously we know that Spock goes on and becomes such good friends with Kirk that we're now getting to see the flawed side of a young Kirk, and but through Commander Burnham.
It's
Um,
Burnham that Spock learns to open up to friends,
Exactly,
right?
which then leads him to Kirk. So I think it's only right that we see
Yes,
the flawed sides of Burnham as well,
I
because
think
she's by no means the final article.
with Burnham, and I think that's the truth of why she struggled to find her place on Discovery
Mm,
again after a year,
yeah,
because for the past year
she's had
she's
to
been
be.
her own agent,
Yeah,
no authority to answer to.
and I think that's also been one of the more interesting things as a viewer as well, because like the whole thing, or like Discovery 1, 2, and 3, um, are essentially where she is the focus, but she isn't the commanding officer.
Yeah,
Whereas we've been used to it being about Kirk and his crew, about Picard and his crew, about Cisco and his crew, about Janeway and crew, Archer and crew. um, it Yet this is about a person who hasn't made it to the point where she
yeah,
has a crew yet, and
or at
it's
least is
almost
in command of a crew.
exact, yeah.
She does
So
have a
this
crew,
is her story of how she maybe gets to that point.
but thankfully we've also started very well fleshing out
Everyone else.
even beyond that smaller core crew, right?
Mm. Yeah,
The Doctor is doing some really good heavy lifting this year,
yeah.
I think.
And last year,
Um,
God, like I mean,
yeah,
Jesus,
last year as well.
yeah. Playing a
Um,
playing a dead person, literally dead, rebuilt by mushrooms.
it's a
So,
great and I think episode 7 is very good.
mm,
I was confused about a point.
go on.
The mother.
Mm.
At what point is this mum from?
This is the mother um, after um, all of the events of season 2.
It is. I couldn't quite pull
Yeah.
whether it was after that or technically it's a mother from before that.
No, because the mother from before that was stuck with the suit.
Yes.
So, because
What I might
the
just be
suit,
forgetting
yeah.
something in season 2. What happened to the mother at
Mm.
the end in season 2?
She was ripped back into the future because
Yes.
she was stuck in that timeline for whatever reason, or that part in time for whatever
Yeah.
reason. She could obviously move forward by living in it, but she couldn't necessarily um, permanently time jump to somewhere else.
Yeah,
Um,
that's it.
but the suit was programmed to respond to the DNA of that family, which is why Burnham managed to get it off her.
Yeah.
And then Burnham gets it, and so on and so on. So
So now you've got Michael's mum who's joined the
has
Vulcan
joined the
and the
yeah.
Romulan
Mm,
nuns.
mm. But
I
yeah, I mean,
love
all
watching her pull the truth out of
mm.
Michael
Yeah, I
in
mean that was
this.
brilliantly written. That was
Yeah.
very nicely written, very nice. Like because it's quite subtle in how like
And it's
candid
the anger
the
that Michael
characters
thinks
are.
she's not on her side,
Mm. And
and
then
that
she kind of yeah
Michael needs to face the truth
yeah.
herself as much as telling it
Mm.
to these people. So how this episode has them traveling to what was once called Vulcan, but is now
Yep.
called
Nivar.
Navarre, which
Mm.
is a homeworld for the Vulcan and Romulan people.
Yep. And
The
it still hasn't fully become one culture.
Yeah,
There seems to be a Romulan safe haven, a Vulcan safe haven, and potentially a continent where they are striving to be one.
it looks also it looks like the Federation before the burn
Mm.
were carrying on of the kind of potential travel of corruption they had during Picard's era.
There was that, and then there was also a nice little line where they suggested that they almost cared too much,
That they were too big.
um, that they were too big. Which again, I think,
Because you
whereas,
have the reverse of the classic
mm,
Spock line where the Vulcan actually says, the
yeah,
Vulcan president says to Saru, they focus on the needs of the many and not the needs of
they
the
forgot
one.
about the needs of the few. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that that's the I again the like Star Trek is always about the contemporary social commentary, and that is very much what we're experiencing nowadays with massive, essentially monopolized companies.
yeah,
In many ways, the federation that they're speaking of in that is actually, say, Amazon. And which is so big and everybody uses it, but at the same time, and in many ways makes our lives a lot easier, but at the same time is rotten to the core.
yeah.
And other services, be it social media
And,
platforms, um, and there's been a lot of discussion of do we need billionaires nowadays and things like that. So
and
um,
the correct answer to that is no. No, we do not
no,
need billionaires.
but do we need the Federation? And that's the question in this. Like, can the Federation exist as something more than maybe a physical
See,
entity and become more
I
of an ideal?
that's the thing. I still hold let it. I told you what I would have loved as
Mm.
an idea for this was that they'd never found the Federation.
And they had to rebuild it themselves.
That them
So,
traveling, looking for the Federation from planet to
mm.
planet is what brought everyone back together again.
I mean, there's no saying that next season it isn't going to be that. I think that potentially, obviously, they found this little core of it,
Yeah,
and if
and we
they,
don't know how. We still don't know whether we can truly trust the Federation they found, right? The Starfleet. It's not tell I, it's not even a Federation they found.
it's Starfleet,
They found
yeah.
Starfleet. Yeah,
Mm.
there is no
So
Federation.
not really, no. So we'll find out. We'll find out. But on the whole, I've
Yeah,
loved this
I
series. I
this
know. Obviously, you've got some
it
interesting
was.
ideas of.
I'm being overly critical. I love it. I think it's great
Mm,
television.
yeah,
I think it's what Star Trek needs to be. It's just now
mm,
and again
yeah,
there's just a jar with my view on Star Trek
and
at
I
times.
and I completely
But
get you.
that's a feeling, and that Star Trek's not going anywhere.
No,
And I think specifically in a lot of video content that's made out there that certainly focuses on negative
mm,
views is that you certainly see it in in Star Wars video content, in Star Trek
mm,
video content as well, is the idea that ah Star Trek's ruined forever or Star Wars is ruined forever. It's not no. The Star
mm.
Trek and Star Wars we all love isn't going anywhere.
No, it's not like they're suddenly not going to exist. Like
Yeah,
I'm sure that you have. I mean, I have my box sets. Currently in the UK and in certain regions of the world, Netflix has every TV series,
Bar Picard.
um, except for Picard, oddly, and Lower Decks and
Yeah,
what have you.
no one outside of
Um,
America has lower deck shit.
Currently, yeah, I feel like
But
Channel Four will get it here at some
it,
point. But it's yeah, I mean these things aren't going away, but obviously TV. In fact, any entertainment format to survive has to get new
yeah,
audiences. And this is doing exactly that. It's ticking the nostalgia boxes the right amount for
that's the thing.
existing
We
fans.
either accept that Star Trek is over, and
Yeah.
it's a thing from the past that we
Mm,
all enjoy very much,
mm,
or
mm.
we let it grow and become whatever it wants to be now.
Yeah,
And in 10, 15 years' time, a
it will change
generation
again.
that grew up with this Star Trek gets to experience the same thing we're talking about right now, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
if something is going to last forever,
Mm. It has to grow and change.
it has to shift. The superheroes,
Yeah, yeah.
they've shifted and changed over the years. Doctor Who,
Mm,
any media that wants to last more than 10 seasons or
mm.
10
Well, I mean,
films or
we mentioned
whatnot.
it last week. I think that um, Discovery has hit what Doctor Who has managed to hit in the
Yeah.
last decade,
Even,
and I think I I will reserve judgment on Picard until season two's been released and I've seen season two. So I still it felt a bit too. Oh look, nostalgia.
see,
Like for me, there was
I don't agree
something.
with you as much on Picard as that. I get where you're coming from,
I enjoyed it,
but
but I think it was. I think
plus
maybe I had a slightly cynical mind at the time as well because it
something
was like.
something Picard introduced, a
Mm.
cool new thing that showed up here as well.
Oh yeah, but then if potentially they are doing an overarching story that's something a bit more, then
I
maybe
still absolutely just love the idea of Romulan warrior nuns that pledge themselves to a lost cause.
yeah,
It's such a great concept,
it is, it is.
and
But
I love that line when she's talking
sorry,
to her mum,
mm,
and she's like, "Oh yeah, we pledge ourselves to lost causes.
yeah,
You're not you're not
you're
going to
not a
win
lost
this
cause.
tribunal."
Oh yeah, yeah, that one, yeah,
And that's a very Michael move, right? Isn't it?
mm,
Screw diplomacy. Let's
yeah,
back this president into a corner she can't get.
yeah. But quite a smart one and a nice
And there was
little
some
peek at a little bit more of Vulcan mythology
yeah, there's some
and things.
wonderful moments between the Vulcan president and Saru.
And Saru, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Saru,
Because I mean, we've said it before. We'll say it again. Doug Jones
Yeah,
is, yeah, like I'm so happy for him that he's got this, because
he's
as
the
great
best.
as
He
he
is
is as a,
one of the best
like,
monster
in the,
actors in the business, right?
oh yeah,
If not the best monster actor.
mm.
And being able to take that and
I
also
think only
craft,
only Circus could fight him for that, and that obviously that's a slightly different
yeah,
thing because Circus is a mocap guy and
yeah, and
he's a practical guy.
and
But
because even the way Suri walks,
yeah,
like it's
the
just such wonderful kind
mm,
of.
yeah,
But yeah, he had some great moments with, and it's what Michael's friend keeps saying, right?
mm,
They're true believers.
yeah.
They're probably true believers more than even the actual current Federation.
And I think the thing is that though that like the Discovery crew are very much, as we've discussed with the films before, they are very much the reason or the seeds for the Federation that exists in Picard's time,
Yeah,
rather than the Kirk crew. The Kirk crew again are the old guard who were on the way out as the new guard, the Discovery crew, and their contemporaries are coming in, and
although timelines that doesn't
time.
actually match.
No, but they're. I mean, I know they're of a similar ilk, but like
Like
say, like
Chekhov is probably significantly younger
he
than
is,
any.
but the thing is that like the Discovery, as the name suggests,
Yeah,
was a forward thinking science vessel essentially, whereas the Enterprise was still the tail end of what was possibly more of a military vessel.
yeah,
And so although they were alongside each other in timeline, really the Discovery was looking forward, whereas the Enterprise was almost the end of the
I
end of
just
an
say
era.
Discovery A.
Yeah,
I don't think it's actually got an A
I
suffix,
think they
but
did. I think
oh,
they
did
have.
they?
I
Oh,
think
it
they
is
have.
Discovery
Yeah.
A.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
It's lovely.
yeah, the
Nice.
detached nacelles.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
I like that Discovery got a full refit so it could become.
Yeah.
And that is some stuff from episode 6 I really liked watching all the
Mm.
refit scenes.
Yeah. Mm.
And yet I liked the moment at the end of episode 8, not episode 8, episode 7 with
Mm.
Tilly when
Yeah.
she has that moment with, and this show is full of phenomenal actors, really.
Yeah.
Uh, the scene with Stamets,
Yeah.
Anthony, that
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I'm terrible with
where
names, so
he's he's obviously a genius, and he's
mm.
also very lacking in his
Personal skills
yeah.
at
And when she
times.
asks him what she'd think, and he
Mm.
always gets there,
Yeah. But he doesn't
but
quite get there in this because he gets interrupted. So like
yeah,
yeah,
and she obviously leaves with him thinking she wouldn't
yeah.
like. Oh no,
That he
the,
wouldn't want
my
her to
superior
be.
officer couldn't serve under
Mm.
me.
Yeah.
But obviously, he ends up getting the rest of the crew together and
Yeah. It's a lovely
telling her to
moment.
take the job. Yeah,
Mm.
and she's the heart
She is.
of the crew,
Yeah.
right?
She's the heart of the crew, and she always has been the heart of the crew. And it's a
Yeah,
one again. It's a nice long game payoff that you didn't see in older seasons of Star Trek. So,
it's something
but
I think because I think that's the thing with mirror universe versions of characters, right?
mm,
They're not radically different in their personalities,
yeah,
but they are different in their morality.
mm,
The mirror universe is full of evil people,
mm,
but that mirror universe had a confident Tilly who could lead a ship.
yeah, and you got that little window of it as well, where you
Yeah,
saw Tilly have to pretend to be confident
and
Tilly.
Tilly
So.
can be that person.
But she's also good with diplomacy between
Yeah,
the people, and she's good at getting people to do what they want, what she needs them to do. So, like, excellent choice.
yeah,
Can't
good
wait to see where
choice.
it goes.
Nope.
On that note, I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah, that is a
Um,
disco corner. A
that
disco
is,
corner that I think is actually longer than
yeah,
the bit on the film.
Yeah, as we sort of thought it would be this week. Possibly not next week because we're only going to discuss the one episode of Disco
Yes,
next
we'll be
week.
caught up with Discovery
Yeah,
by next week's episode. And
and
we both really like Voyage Home, so we've probably
yeah,
got a lot to say about that.
yeah, we've got loads. I might even watch it again before next week, even though I've watched it recently. So to be,
It's a very watchable film.
it certainly is. Yeah. So yeah. Well, I hope you've
We
enjoyed this week, everyone.
apologise for the little oddness in the middle where we cut out.
I don't. It had
Matt
nothing to do
doesn't.
with me. I mean, it was my internet that dropped out. It wasn't his. But it's. I think there's some work being done on the line. It's nothing to do with me. I didn't order it, so I'm not going to apologise. So there. Take
Fair
you
enough.
know, renegade. So
Remember, the things you've learnt today.
mm,
Billionaires are not
mm,
ethical.
yes,
Live long and prosper. And wear a mask. We're getting political this week, although that should not
indeed.
be a political thought. Goodbye.
No, peace and long life.